Well, good day everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Hey, you guys remember this machine? This is a holiday case. This is a 5 Series Smith Corona Silent Super. I've had this machine for a few years. This is the one I've told you the story about repeatedly, but I got it off a Craigslist ad locally, and it was very, very, very grungy and filthy. And after all the cleaning I did to it, it was skipping, and it took me months and months of testing and figuring things out. Finally getting one of the Typewriter repair Bibles from Ted Monk, and I was able to get the alignment set right on this escapement, and this has been a really good machine ever since then. It is a early 5 Series Silent Super. It is, I think, 1953 or 54, and it's an elite font 12 character per inch machine. But look what I got now. What does that look like? Huh? Yes, I have another Smith Corona Silent Super, this time a 1957 model. Let's take a look at it and let's compare them, shall we? Well, the earlier Silent Super I have, it has the 3 stripes up on top of the ribbon cover. A lot of people like that. I think it's a nice touch. This, of course, is the gray and dark green trim machine. As I said earlier, it's an early version, 1953 or 54, I forget which. This has a dealer sticker, Albuquerque Office Machine Company, 5314 4th Street Northwest. This machine I've had for a few years, and I recently got all the rubber parts replaced by J.J. Short, Platen, feed rollers, and even paper bale rollers. So the whole thing is typing like a new machine. And the holiday case for this machine is in a little bit rougher shape than the newer one. And I have one of those dryer sheets that I keep in it to give it a nicer aroma, and the fact that there's still a little bit of stinky smell to that holiday case, even though I've done all this cleaning over the years. So the newer machine, this is 1957, the year I was born. This is the seafoam green model, and it looks kind of, from an angle, looks more like brownish tan, dirty, dingy, because it really is dirty still and stained. It has the light green space bar. You'll notice, as far as the styling of it, it does not have the 3 stripes. They've done away with that. But everything else in this machine is pretty much the same as the older one. Condition-wise, the older one is missing the little finger lever on the right side of the paper bale, whereas the newer one here has that finger. But everything else is the same, I think. They didn't change these much at all. Underneath it, it's all the same, right? The mechanism, the escapement, and all that, everything looks identical. This machine, this 1957 one, does not have any dealer stickers on it, and it's actually in fairly good shape as far as the paint job. You don't see a whole lot of scratches on the slot in the back where it goes into the holiday case, but there are a number of discolorations. For instance, the left top corner of the ribbon cover has a little bit of scraped paint, and a little bit of wear down here in the front below the space bar is worn down to bare metal in some spots, but and it's dirty. I've done some superficial cleaning and degreasing, but I haven't done the thorough final cleaning on this machine. Well, so let's go ahead and cover all the features of this 1957 Smith Corona Silent Super. Okay, so because this is a newer machine, it has a #1 key and an exclamation mark, and a plus and equals on the right side of the upper row. And because this is a Silent Super, it has a full key set tabulator, the clear and the set key, along with the tab key itself. And just behind the tab key is the bichrome setting on the upper right part of the keyboard. And on the upper left corner of the keyboard, adjacent to the #1 key, is a manual ribbon reversing switch. And like all 5 Series machines in this era, it has a manual touch selector on the left side underneath the ribbon cover. It goes from low to high, basically 6 stops, really 7 if you count the high as the 7th one. I like to run it somewhere between 3 and 4. I think it gives it pretty snappy operation without being too hard to operate. And of course, it is a segment shift machine, so that's very nice to operate with one's pinky finger. So on the left side of the carriage, just in front of the paper bale, you have this lever. If you push it forward, it will disconnect the line spacing and you have continuous variable adjustment. Back behind the paper bale is your line spacing selector between 1, 2, and 3 line spacing. And then the knob itself, you have a pull-out button that disables the line spacing slip clutch, and this is a permanent adjustment. If you change this, you can't go back to your old setting. Of course, your carriage release lever is behind the Platen knob. There's one on each side. And the classic 5 series carriage return lever as well. And you might notice on my machine there is some evidence of the carriage return lever putting a slight scratch on the front of the ribbon cover, but it's not really excessive. It looks like it hasn't happened that much. On the left side of the Platen is the end of line indicator. So you get this lined up when you first thread your paper in, and it'll tell you when you're getting close to the end of your page at the bottom. And of course your paper bale flips up and down. It has 3 rubber-coated rollers that are adjustable in horizontal position. On the paper scale behind the paper bale is an adjustable edge guide for the left edge of the paper, and of course you have your left margin setting. Behind that you just press it and slide it. In the front of the Platen you have these old style Smith Corona paper fingers that supports the edge of the paper, and it slides back and forth for you to adjust it. And on the front is another scale down below. On the right side of the carriage you have a nice convenient lever to flip up the paper bale. Again, you have one of these paper support fingers that slides back and forth to secure the right edge of the paper. This lever right here is for locking the carriage at the storage position, which is in the middle of the carriage. And then this lever right here is for removing the Platen itself. And of course you have your right Platen knob, and behind the right Platen knob is the right hand carriage release lever. And then this lever right here, of course, is the release for the feed rollers. You have your right margin setting, press and slide. Here is the rear view of the machine. You can see your 2 margin settings and your flip up rabbit ear style paper support. You can also adjust the support at different angles, so you don't have to necessarily have the paper fully up high. You can adjust it for different heights. And then this back panel flips down to reveal the bar that the margins settings slip on, and below that are the tab stops. So we did a little bit of work on this machine yesterday at our Typewriter Society meeting. William, specifically one of the members of our society, worked on 1 or 2 of the linkages that was hanging up in the slots of the segment, but there's still some problems with 3 or 4 of the type bars. It's going to need some troubleshooting. Okay, so if you have, or you suspect you have, sluggish type bars in your machine, here's the trick to figuring out which ones they are. And I've showed you this before in a previous video. You want to take your machine and put it up on the rear panel like this. Open up the ribbon cover like that. And then on the bottom of the machine, you want to find the universal bar. So if you type, you'll see this bar that moves across regardless of which key you're hitting. It moves the universal bar. So you want to hold that universal bar in the active position away from the type bar linkages. And while you're doing that, you want to test each key. It should spring back just like that. It should spring back to its rest position. And when you're doing this, the type bar has to flip itself back up against the force of gravity, and it's only using its individual springs to do so. It's not using the spring assistance of the universal bar. So on this machine, watch the number 1 key. See that? It's a little sluggish. The dash and apostrophe, or asterisk, dash asterisk is the same way. And especially the V. the V key. And when your name is Van Cleve, you want the V key to not hang up, right? So look at that. So those three are sluggish. They're having problems. Now the funny thing is, if you release the universal bar, it may work okay. Sometimes you may think it's okay, especially if you flip it back down in the normal orientation. You may just have a sluggish type bar linkage. It may give you problems intermittently, but this is how to find them. Now, I've already done a bunch of degreasing of the slots in the segment with lacquer thinner and alcohol, and also I've degreased the slots in where the linkages pivot. There's two other sets of slots where they pivot in. I don't think those are gummed up. Okay, so underneath the machine here, these little linkages right here, I think they're called clevises, but they are like a little spring-loaded fork, and if you spread them apart, there's a pin that goes through the hole in the linkage here for the type bar. And you can spread these apart with a tool like a screwdriver, and you can disconnect the clevis pin from the type bar linkage. And so I've done that with the V key that was hanging up. And here you can see the bottom of the type bar linkage with a little loop in the end with that little hole that the pin of that spring-loaded clevis fits into. And now that I've isolated the V type bar from the rest of the linkage, I can tell that the type bar itself is not hanging up in the slot of the segment. It is free to fall under its own weight. And so I know that that segment slot is not the problem now, and I know it's going to be in another part of the linkage. And here is the clevis pin itself. And I'm having it right up and down the shaft of this little pick as I'm pressing gently on the V key. It looks like to me that this linkage is free to move. The whole key linkage moves freely. The spring-loaded keycap mechanism looks like it's moving freely, and so the question comes down to where is the binding happening? And I think because separated, with this clevis linkage separated, there's no binding. I think it points to the fact that the actual clevis itself, this spring-loaded pin assembly, is probably where the actual binding was taking place at. And as I look at it here, it looks to me like one side of this spring-loaded fork is a little bit misshapen compared to the other side. It may need to be straightened out a little bit. Okay, so I have the V key to your right and the T key type bar right next to it, both holding each other down. Now, what I have to do is position the clevis and split it apart with the flat blade screwdriver, like this, and try to get it in the hole of that type bar linkage. I have to spread the clevis apart and get that pin in the hole like that. Okay, so I got it. And what I had to do is the clevis pin, you can see right there, that whole flat linkage was twisted slightly. So the pin going through the hole in the end of the type bar linkage was twisted relative to the axis of rotation of the type bar itself. So twisting this flat linkage right here, right, so the pin is now parallel to the axis of rotation. That's what freed it up. So now I'm going to basically have to do the same thing to maybe the number 1 key. Let's see, let's push up the universal bar. And the number 1 key is doing the same thing. I'll have to mess with that. And I've already fixed the dash key the same way. Okay, so the number 1 key is awful easy to disconnect because there's no type bar next to it to obstruct you from bending, prying it open. But anyways, the type bar itself is free to move. It moves in the slot of the segment, nice and easy like. It looks to me, just examining this pin here, the angle of the pin doesn't look quite as parallel to the axis, which is this crescent-shaped rod that goes through the perpendicular to the type bar, is the axis of rotation right here. And it looks like this pin is just a little bit bent from it, so I'm going to have to reform that and put it back on and see if I fix it. Let's see if I can twist it apart and reattach it. Get the hold of the line. There it is. Okay, now let's try that. Yay! Well, we're not completely out of the woods yet, because even though all the type bar linkages are now operating properly, we don't know if I messed up the type alignment on some of these characters. Maybe the type bars are slightly bent now, so I'm going to have to check out all of the way the letters line up. I might have to do some adjusting to the shape of the type bars, especially that V key, because I was, before I figured out it was the clevis pin angle, I was kind of bending the type bar a little bit back and forth, and so there may be a little bit of misalignment there I'm going to have to mess with. And also, I think my motion is off a little bit. The upper and lower case don't quite match. I'm going to have to twiddle with that. And I noticed on this last evening when I was typing a blog article that the letter F and the letter H both feel a little bit hard to push at the very end of the stroke. They make a light imprint, and I think what's happening is they are misaligned horizontally, and they're hitting the sidewalls of the type guide as they go into the typing position. And so I'm going to probably have to reform those type bars to make sure they're going into the type guide properly, right in the middle. Okay, so if you set your touch control to the lightest setting and then using the same finger and really light, consistent touch typing, you'll see like the F is a little lighter, and then the other letters. I tried to do a whole line here, and the 1/2 was lighter than the others. So like right here up on this line, I found with this F that it was actually rubbing on one side of the type guide when it was going into the typing position. So I reformed that type bar, and now right after that I was able to get a darker F, just because using really light typing, you'll find if it's not going into the type guide correctly, it will stop that type bar from hitting as hard as it should. And so anyway, we get down on this bottom line here now, after having done that to all of these, and now it's much more consistent. I did have to adjust the ampersand a little bit, a couple of the other keys, but now it's a lot more consistent with really light single-fingered typing. I want you to place your attention on this exclamation mark, which is the shifted 1, and you'll notice how it looks a little smudgy. Well, that's because it was very slightly hitting the side of the type guide. For some reason, it wasn't really smudging the 1, but it was smudging the exclamation mark. And now that I've slightly reformed that type bar, I actually had to bend the type bar about 2/3 of the way up, bend it to the right, and then the actual, where the type slug is, bend it back to the left so it keeps it vertical. But anyway, you can see now the exclamation mark is nice and sharp, much sharper, not as blurry as it was before. So if you're getting smearing of characters, especially side to side smearing, it's probably because right as the type slug is hitting the ribbon, it could be sliding sideways because it's sliding into the type guide and hitting the sidewalls of the type guide. Okay, so now let's see if we can get the upper and lower case aligned properly. As you might be able to tell, the lowercase h is slightly higher than the uppercase h. The parentheses, which are uppercase, are both even. That's one of the tallest characters, that's uppercase. So it looks like the uppercase is hitting the Platen even, but you'll notice the slash, this is a lowercase character. You notice the top of the slash is a little bit faint compared to the bottom of the slash. And so that might be symptomatic of, again, the lowercase is a little too high, and so the tops of the characters are kind of missing the center of the Platen a little bit. Okay, underneath the machine, just as you have the machine sitting on its back, this whole thing here out of focus is the escapement, but just above the escapement is this set screw and locking nut. And the machine is currently in the lowercase position, so there's a plate right here that this set screw pushes against, and that determines, or that sets the lowercase position. The uppercase position is set by this screw here that limits the travel of how far down the segment can move in its shifting. So this right here, again, this set screw and locking nut controls the lower case, and what we're going to have to do is lower it slightly, which is going to be driving the screw in more. Okay, so I have my flat blade screwdriver on the slot of the set screw. I'm going to take my wrench here and I'm going to loosen the locking nut, and I'm going to drive this in about a quarter turn and then lock it again. And we'll do a test typing and just go back and forth until we get it. And it looks like it's nicely lined up now, so it looks like 1/4 turn did the trick. So one of the things that I've noticed about this machine is common with a lot of these silent supers of this era is they have these little rubber gaskets underneath some of the screws on the bottom. And those gaskets get kind of flat and squished out and kind of dry and corroded. And so I have not taken off any of the body panels yet. I will do so eventually to do the final cleaning, but I'm going to probably replace those. And one of the ways of doing it is my friend Kevin figured this out, is he found some little grommets, rubber grommets at the hardware store, and if you slice them in half with a razor blade or razor knife, you get these nice little round donut-shaped flat grommets that you can put underneath these screws to replace them with. There's a lot to like about a 5 Series Smith Corona. No, they're not as small or as lightweight as an ultra portable. They're certainly taller. The case, of course, is a little taller, and they're a little bit heavier. But they have a lot going for them. They have all the features of a bigger typewriter, including a carriage release levers on both knobs, full key set tabulator in the case of these silent supers. They are segment shift machines, and they have some really nice features, like for instance the key tops are articulated. The linkages for the keys are articulated, so the key surface of the key top stays flat, stays horizontal throughout its entire travel, instead of like it does on a lot of other machines. So that's a little feature that gives these a nice ergonomics. It has a wide range on the touch selector, and if these things are properly cleaned and degreased, you will notice a definite difference between the high and the low setting. Another thing I really love about these machines is you flip it up like that and you have ready access to the escapement mechanism right there. It's not buried down deep inside the machine like in a lot of other kinds of machines. And adjustments like your lower and upper case settings are right there, easy to get to, easy to service. Granted, there's no cover on the bottom of the machine, so if you want to do some lap typing, you may want to actually disconnect the top lid from the case, keep the typewriter in the bottom half of the holiday case, and you can just set it on your lap that way as an alternative. But they're great machines. They are light enough and small enough to be portables, even though they're a little heavy, but they're not as heavy as some medium-sized portables. So they have a lot going for them that if you could only have 1 or 2 machines in your collection, perhaps it might be one of these silent supers. I think another thing that the silent super has going for it is the fact that the Platen is so easy to remove. It was designed for secretaries and users of the machine to be able to take it out easily and clean underneath it, which also gives you ready access to the feed rollers underneath. And all that means is that you can take those parts out and ship them off and get the rubber surfaces recovered, which in the United States here is a really neat service we have through companies like J.J. Short. Which means, as I've done with this older silent super, you can get all new rubber and it rejuvenates the whole machine like a new machine. Another benefit to the silent supers, you don't have to be a master technician in typewriter disassembly in order to take the Platen out. Some machines, especially ultra portables, can be really difficult getting the Platen out and put back in properly, and have all the little plates and levers and springs, especially the springs, put back in the carriage properly. You don't have to worry about it with these machines. It's just easy. Okay, to remove the platen, you want to first pull out the slip clutch lever on the left platen knob, flip up the paper bail, and then we'll go over to the right side. Oh yes, you want to move your margin settings all the way out to the end. You want to fold back the back panel that reveals your tab system and flip this paper finger out. And then this lever right here, you're going to push it up, and that'll enable you to pull up that side of the platen, slide this paper finger on the left all the way over, and then you can pull the platen roller to the right and remove it completely from the unit. To reinstall the platen, you pull out the slip clutch lever on the left platen knob, set the left side in and get it lined up, and then set the right side down in the slot and hold your mouth just right, like that, and it'll pop into place, and this lever should slip back to its rest position. You can close the back panel, lower the paper bail, and get your guides set here. And push in the clutch button on the left, and now you're back to your regular ratcheting. Another thing people like about the Silent Supers is the touch on them. It just has a nice, snappy feel. There is a lot to be said for it. This is one of the nicer machines, the more well-regarded machines in terms of its touch. And that's probably one of the reasons why I snapped this machine up when I saw it a couple of weeks ago. It's nice that it's a pica typeface, a different typeface than this one. And now that I've done the alignment to the type bars and everything, it types really nice. It has a nice clear imprint. And when I first got this, I was thinking, well, maybe I could fix it up and sell it to a local member of the Typewriter Society, somebody that needs one of these. But man, I'm thinking, this is a machine that's going to be difficult to get rid of. It's just one of those really good machines. And it's a color I didn't have before, a little bit brighter than the drab gray. If you like battleship gray, if you're an old sailor, an old salt, you might like the gray ones, but I like this dingy, kind of dirty seafoam green look to this one. And I had a discussion about typewriter restorations with one of the members of our society yesterday, and he was kind of falling on the same side of the discussion that I was. I'm not really keen on repainting typewriters and making them look brand new or pimping them out or whatever. I like to see the patina of use. I don't mind that. I think for me, as long as the machine works properly, you've serviced it and you got all the bugs ironed out and it's a good functional machine, I don't mind seeing the patina of use, because that's just evidence of its past life, which, you know, we rarely do we ever know what really happened with a typewriter before we got a hold of it. So it's kind of cool to see that indirect evidence of, yeah, this thing had a life. It had an interesting life. We don't know what that was exactly, but we can see evidence of it, and here it is, still working. With this older machine that I've had for a few years, it didn't come with any ephemera at all, other than, of course, the dealer sticker on the side of the machine. But this newer machine, no dealer sticker, but it came with a whole bag full of ephemera. Well, first of all, there's this little tag with a little blue string, and it says the all-new Smith Corona Portable Silent Super. And this is the tag that probably was attached to the carriage return lever, which is really cool. And then when you open it up inside, it has a little space in here for them to put the price of the machine. This one doesn't have the price written down in it or stamped in it. Anyway, this is a warranty, and it says it is warranted for 90 days. So unfortunately, this machine is out of warranty. Oh well. So that's cool. I haven't seen one of these before in a Smith Corona. It's kind of nice to have this ephemera. Here is another tag. This orange-brown tag has a string with a key. It has the key to the holiday case. Isn't that cool? And of course it says the Smith Corona Holiday Carrying Case, brings you new beauty and styling, new ease of handling, and new all-around satisfaction. If you open up this card, it tells you all about how to open up the case and how to lift the lid from the case and remove the inside mechanism from the case and everything. So that's pretty cool. That's neat to have that. Then we have the main user's manual, nice 1950s styling. I always love the artwork in these things. It shows you the layout of all of the features, and I just love that artwork. Isn't that cool? Kind of a combination of graphic arts and photography, right? So 3-color printing. And then at the very end, in the back, it shows you the whole lineup of the Smith Corona model for that model year. And that includes the Silent Super, the Sterling, the Clipper, the Electric Portable, and the Skywriter, the Smith Corona Electric, the big upright electric, the 88 Secretarial, and the Pacemaker. And one of the things I noticed in this is there is no Silent in the model anymore. This is just the Silent Super. And so pretty cool manual. Okay, and that's not all. There is a touch typing guide. Yes, a touch typewriting, and I believe this is a Smith Corona publication because the part number down below looks like the same kind of nomenclature, but it has the position of the fingers, and on the back it has the position of the hands and some exercises, typing exercises right there. And it has examples of setting up a letter, how to format a letter, and addressing envelopes, right? And finally, I thought this was pretty cool. This is a cleaning sheet for rolling through the machine and cleaning ink off the Platen and the type slugs. This is made by 3M, so it kind of looks like a sheet of sandpaper. It's 3M Scotch brand number 575, so you might want to search for that on eBay or whatever. It looks like sandpaper. There's a paper backing. The front kind of has the color of sandpaper, but what it really is a thin foam with a little bit of sticky tackiness to it. And you can see this part of it's already been used, and I guess according to the instructions on the back is once you use part of it, you just kind of fold it over like that, so it's no longer being exposed, and you can use another fresh part of it. So that's a cleaning sheet for cleaning the Platen. And of course the original plastic bag that all this stuff came in, all of the stuff it came with, including the little tags that hang off of it, that's really rare, and that's another reason why I really want to keep this machine. Well, it's cool. A second Smith Corona Silent Super. It's fun to have. I had a Sterling, and I believe I sold it a year or two ago. I didn't quite like the touch on the Sterling quite as much as I like the Silent and the Silent Super. And I never really studied the differences close enough to know, but that particular machine at least didn't quite have the snappiness and the tightness of machines like this. But I love these machines, and it seems like they're plentiful here in the United States and reasonably priced, perhaps, if you get a good deal. And easy to service. And the service literature that Smith Corona wrote, that Ted Monk has reprinted kindly enough for us, is really some of the best service literature out there on how to do the adjustments. It just documents it in pictures and words so well. So don't be afraid to get your hands in there and work on these particular machines. They are well worth it. Leave any comments or questions down below. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, as always, have yourselves a great day. Stay creative. Bye-bye for now.